Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk with the Titans, live from London, UK, all the way to the US of A and worldwide. I'm your host, Kalam, and this is Talk with the Titans. On tonight's show, we have Dr. Ali Muhammad in the studios giving us a discourse on Excavated, the lost pages of Islam. Greetings, Dr. Ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. How are you today, brother?
Oh, alhamdulillah. Hey, listen, I am beautiful. I'm happy to have you back in the studios again. You was literally one of our first Titans to appear on the show to give us that support. So it was only right and fitting that we've now upgraded to have you back on again.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I thank the listening audience for having me. And I know that we will be educated today, and I will learn as well. And I know for sure that I will spark even more controversy with some of the things that I'm going to say, but it's all in the spirit of Islam and peace and growing the Ummah into a better knowledge of Islam.
That's right, that's right. Wow. So, you know what, today we're going to be going into the lost pages of Islam. We're going to be talking about Abdul Malik. Was there Muhammad before Abdul Malik? We're going to talk about Hajj. Was Hajj originally performed in Mecca or elsewhere? Did it get moved or not? Quran versus Hadith. Listen, we've got so much in store for you. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, I implore you, please hit the subscribe button down below, or literally just, I believe it's just up here. You let me know, audience, is my face pointing to you right now up there? Just hit that subscribe button as well. I know we've started a little bit late, so please just hit that share button, let everybody know that we're starting right now. We have Dr. Ali Muhammad in the studios. Wow, the Titan. This guy is phenomenal. But let me not even go into that. We're going to go into it a little bit later. So let me introduce our panel. We have a star-studded panel lined up for you. We have the brother Stephen Graham from the UK. He is a director and filmmaker. He brought to you Hidden. Is it Hidden Northeast Africa or Northeast Africa Hidden? I apologize if I haven't got it right. So, brother Stephen Graham, could you let everybody know a little bit about you?
Yeah, it's Northeast Africa Hidden Truthers documentary. Also brought the documentary Secret of the Desert and Wadi Anam. My main focus is making films and documentaries in regards to Northeast, well, what they call the Middle East, which is actually rightfully Northeast Africa. And that's what I really focus on, connecting the dots and the historical aspects of that region, Northeast Africa, and actually, showing that what they classify as Middle East today is actually Africa itself.
That's right, that's right. And we also have in the studio our brother Partner Hisi from the Hebrew War Machine. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Partner Hisi, Hebrew War Machine. Griot, an independent researcher for the Black American Holocaust Museum. Pretty much ready to hear Brother Ali Muhammad go into this lecture.
Okay, and I know you're my Igbo brother, so I'm going to greet you with a kedu.
Kedu.
Igbo kwenu, hey. Igbo kwenu, hey. Igbo kwenu, hey. All right, and we've also got our brother, brother Kufu as well from Team Osiris. So greetings to you, my brother.
Hotep, Islam, Shalom.
Hotep. And we also got our brother Isa. Isa, please greet yourself, man. Come in. The whole audience knows you. They're just waiting for you to come out.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. What's happening? How you doing, family?
Walaikum salam. I know you've got some powerful questions to give to our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad, and I know our audience has just been waiting for you.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, I'm glad I'm here to help correct our wonderful brother Ali Muhammad on some of the ideas that he has that are wayward. We just want to bring him back to the straight path, inshallah.
Wow, this is good. This is gonna be real interesting. I think the audience, the panel, everybody's gonna learn something today. And I think Isa, you might be in for a surprise. All right. So Dr. Ali Muhammad, could you let us know what have you got in store for us today? Just give us an overview of what you got in store for us today.
Okay. Well, my message is actually very simple. It's a message that I did not create myself. This message was created by my ancestors and the various people who we call prophets, nabis, etc. And my diligent study inside of that is to understand the world that I live in now and the applicability of those messages, and especially in this sense the message of Quran that was given to Muhammad, peace be upon him. So my message is that when people hear the name Ali Muhammad, and I go really across the world, many of the newer people in a newer movement of spirituality or whatever they have wonder why I practice Islam. And I think that wondering has a lot to do with how the society of the world today is kind of broken up. Usually we have people who are into traditional religion, people who are into what I call new spirituality, which is post-colonization in most of the world, meaning that they lost their ancestral information and thus now they're following newer trends that have been created after that colonization. And then you have people who are just pretty much atheists or agnostic. So I address those three groups, and my goal today is to show that our ancestors were a lot smarter than all three groups in their practicality, in their knowledge of the universe, in the knowledge of their creator, and in how they synthesize that information to create a peaceful society, which allegedly we are all searching for, and most of us are coming up with thin air and an inability to do so, even in our own homes and relationships. So I think that Islam has something great to offer. However, I also hold that Islam has been almost completely compromised from its initiation of the revelation from the Creator to Muhammad. So, looks like we have some background noise or something. We all right? Okay. All right. So that message that I have today is very detailed, but it surrounds the concept that we call Tawheed, which is the oneness of the Creator, and where that originated from in communication in the world and how that applies to today. I think there's a great confusion in respect to God, what God is, who God is, and I think that because of that confusion, it's created atheistic populations of people, and it has created what I call New Age spiritualists who are actually less scientific than we should be. So I think my message is very clear on the Tawheed and how that affects the psychology of human beings in society, and lastly, how history has been given to us. We have been given a very thwarted history, especially in Islam, and it has created beliefs in the sense of they are unfounded, traditional, but yet unfounded. And I think we can do a lot to correct those things so that the people in the society who have a certain position on Islam can possibly correct it through a better education. And most importantly, the Muslims themselves can correct their education, which has had itself co-opted by outsiders who have desired to attack Islam for the reasons of its great world impact in history. So that's where I want to go. I want to talk as much in detail about the Quran and Islamic history and this concept of spirituality or God that we hear, or the lack thereof, that is present in society.
Excellent. Okay, real quickly, I know if you're just subscribing or just join us today, you're watching this. Talk with the Titans was birthed out of the idea that the intellectual giants, the titans of our communities, should have a well-organized platform to discuss present and debate critical information affecting our community. So that being said, this is what's taking place right now, and you're going to be in for a whirlwind, a whirlpool of information through our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad. And I'm gonna actually implore you as well, please just hit the share button down below, let everybody know that we're on right now. Just hit it, Facebook, Twitter, let everybody know that Dr. Ali Muhammad is here right now, and you're about to be in for a treat. So Dr. Ali Muhammad, you just talked about the principle of Tawheed, and I believe that is one of the most fundamental principles that underlies Islam, and not only Islam, we actually find that principle as well within inside of Hebraic texts as Ahad, or even in the Ethiopian text as Tawheed. So could you give us more of an insight of the concept of Tawheed, please?
Well, I could. The Quran is pretty simple. It constantly admonishes the people that idolatry and associating partners with the Creator is the greatest crime that anyone could commit. And the reasons why it lays that out as a crime is that as people begin to devolve into that type of thought, that thought carries with it a certain type of behavior, and that behavior is expressed throughout what we could call types in the Quran, types of people who are disobedient to divine law and instead seek self-pleasures that break the peace of the society. So we can look at the general premise of a person or people who honor the Creator of the universe simply for the mere fact of the thankfulness for being able to eat, have a place to stay, have a sun, a moon, all of what creation gives to us as an offering from its Creator is something to be thankful for. So that spirit of thankfulness leads to appreciation to the Creator and creation, and it gives the idea of being a caretaker for creation so that we can respect everything in creation, including each other. And that produces a healthy mindset. So that is the Quran's admonition for us to do, and it gives us what we call Islam, which has the meaning of peace, but entering into peace through an understanding of the will of the Creator and yielding our will to that will. So that is the simplicity of the concept. As we look into history, what we find is that this word has its origin amongst the black races in Africa, which actually begins to peel back the injury that is currently present in the world of Islam to make us believe that this concept has its originations in a certain geography and amongst a certain people. And it did not have its origination amongst Arabs, nor did it have its origination amongst pale peoples, nor did it have its origination to the detriment of most in what we are now calling Mecca and Medina. So that is the challenge. Tawheed or Tawhido, in the use as it would be used in the Eritrean Orthodox, what is being called a church, which is a misnomer, or the Ethiopic Tawhido church, which is also a misnomer, has its concepts in ancient African traditional thought. And let me say this for the context. When we look at the history of when that word appears, mainly in the language that we call Ge'ez, all right, what we find in the geographical world is a split Roman Empire, the Eastern Orthodox Empire, all right, and the Western Empire, which we call today Roman Catholic. And then we had what was an attempt to describe a Christendom in Ethiopia, which was described as the Oriental Orthodox Church, which held the areas of the Nilotic Sudan with Eritrea, today's Eritrea and Ethiopia, and also held the Malankara Church of Hindu Kush, and as well dealt with the Coptic and the Syriac Levant, if you want to call Levant, Middle Eastern versions that were an antithesis or not in agreement with the ancient world of Byzantine or Rome, which again was pretty much split into two parts, Eastern Orthodox and Western Orthodox. So I'm saying the Oriental, or identifying the Oriental Orthodox system, for a reason, because today we look at it as Christianity, but it could not be described as Christianity as we know it today, because there was no concept of a Jesus in the way that we see it today, and according to the chronology that we see it today. The chronology that we see of a Jesus in the 1st century AD could not have existed during that time, because first of all, there was no AD calendar, and the figure that was a part of the focus was a figure that had had become a mythological figure that was rooted in a real African king. And when we look at the language, as we'll see that that African king had a place where his birth was talked about in the Temple of Luxor, where we have the first, what we might call, immaculate conception. It wasn't immaculate because there was no father. It was immaculate because that was a concept that came with the preparation of the woman who was a part of the dynastic parts of Egypt at that particular time. As time went on, that figure became a mythological figure, but the Tawheed dealt with the unity of that figure with the Creator, which leads us to this concept of Tawheed and understanding the promulgation of two things that came directly out of the Nilotic Sudan and Africa and Egypt, which was the divinity of the original people of that area, as they interfaced with what they considered to be different nationalities of people, not nationalities in the sense only of jurisdiction, but there was a concept of divinity in the Nile Valley through what we would call phenotype or race. All right, there's no other way to put it. Asar, being depicted as he is, as black and green, had a lot more to do with science than we know. And I take it that they knew a lot more about science than we know, and or have developed, knowledge about. And that the Tawheed that developed there was a Tawheed that came from an ancient concept of the divinity of black people. Now that might start some controversy, but I think that that theme carried itself all the way to the genesis of Islam, and this is why Islam is under attack, because the people who have co-opted it don't want our people to know that history. So when we talk about Tawheed, we are talking about the personification of the Creator in the people who are the people of the Creator. And it is my position that the first races or indigenous peoples of this planet are the caretakers, and that the other groups came by other means. And because of that, in looking at history, in looking at where we at now, and looking at the severe problem of racism on the planet, this problem continues to reoccur because there is a history behind all of it. All right. So my position is that the Tawheed that came up out of Africa was a Tawheed that they learned from these ancient cultures, and that these ancient cultures had a lot more of a concept of science and spirituality, and why it is that the Creator created the first human beings black, and what that means, what kind of covenant is in that. And despite what kind of world we live in today that tries its best to hide that reality, history will continue to resurface that discussion. So Tawheed in my connotation is to honor and revere the Creator of the universe, which is a power and a force that connects directly, scientifically and biologically, via what we are calling melanin, to the melanin dominant people on the planet.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you said a hell of a lot of things so far. And I know our audience out there who's typing away in YouTube land are just, speaking very highly of you. They're saying, this Dr. Ali Muhammad, we've been waiting for this. He's a very intelligent guy. He says some very key phrases. And one of those key phrases was that the Isa, the Jesus, the Yeshua that we all know and we all are fond of did not occur within inside of the first century AD, but rather prior. So could you give us a little bit more information on that?
Yes. Well, as we and I highlighted three things that are important. I highlighted the Byzantine Eastern Orthodox Church. That's going to be very important, and the Western branch, which kind of crowned into what we call the Catholic Church today, and the Oriental Orthodox, which was pretty much the black people in Africa and the colonies that they set up in the Levant and in India and North Africa. So when we come to this Isa figure in the Quran, first of all, this will create some controversy and high discussion, but from the pages of the Quran itself, we are faced with some issues. And those issues are that Isa is born of a woman that's called Maryam, okay? And because we have that story and we have the Bible, we believe that that story comes from the pages of the New Testament. However, as I wrote a 438-page dissertation on this subject, the Isa of the Quran predates any verifiable documents that we could call the New Testament Gospels. All right? That's important. And the Bible itself as a composition does not predate the Quran in my scholastic position. What it does draw itself from, which is clear in the Quran, is that the mother of Mary is called the daughter of Amran. All right? And you can find this in Surah 66, Ayah 12. Okay? And that's there for a reason. Because when we look at Old Testament writings, specifically, let's say the book of Numbers, 26th chapter, 59th verse, we find another Maryam who's the daughter of Imran. All right? So when we cross-compare the Old Testament to the Quran is speaking of a figure that is related to what we would call Old Testament figure as opposed to this New Testament figure. That's point number one. When we continue to peruse the pages of the Quran, we see that Maryam is also called the sister of Aaron. Okay? Aaron we know of as the elder brother of Musa or Moses, who was with his brother in Kemet to deliver a message for his people, whom we call Israelites. Okay? So when we look at that alone, and we can not only use those two and start peeling through each example, why is Maryam called the sister of Aaron? Why is she called the daughter of Imran? And why is it matching Old Testament writings and not New Testament writings? The reason why that exists is very simple to explain, and it is explained simply by going back into the Oriental Orthodox system and understanding that the figure that was called the Kyrios in that particular system was related to this figure that we call in the Old Testament Yahshua or Joshua. All right? And when we look at the Hebrew word, all right, Yahshua, and we look at the Aramaic word and the said Arabic word that comes down to us, all right, what we find is that it has this etymology in Kemet in a term called Iyashu, all right, which you can actually find in temple writings, which I put inside my book. Shu being an ancestor, and the word Iya representing the moon, all right, and it was first used, or Ya or Ah or Iya was used by figures like Amos, all right, Amos the first of the 17th and 18th dynasty. All right, so there's a glyph for that and there's a sound for that, and those sounds that became Yahushua, the Joshua or Ishu or Isa are all related in etymology. So my point is the Quran does not speak of a AD figure. It speaks of what we would call a BC figure, and we have to come to grips with why that is, and why Mary is being called the daughter of Amram, and why she's being called the sister of Aaron, when those are all BC figures. And that begins our layer that peels back a whole bunch of other layers.
Wow. Okay. You see, now you're causing a stir. I think you did that purposefully, just to cause a stir, because a lot of our brothers will be highly disagreeing with you because they think that Isa character, that Yeshua character, you know, is to do with the 1st century, but you just pulled it back. You've given us the Quran, where it's saying that, you know, this is talking about Aaron and so forth. We're talking about, you know, we're talking about Old Testament information right here. And I think if the people done a little bit more of a perusal of history, we'll find out that these people in the Eastern African region of Sudan, Egypt, Southern Arabia, dealt mainly with the Old Testament rather than the New Testament. So this is very interesting. You're putting out some information right now that's going to get our brothers and sisters studying. Now, you know what? There's another claim that you've made previously that it's been very hard to swallow with our brothers and sisters. And that's the claim about Abdul Malik being the Muhammad of the Quran. So I'm going to ask you for more information on that. But before I do, I'm going to say, you know, this is why I love Islam. Islam is so beautiful because it marries every single one of those religions, you know, of the so-called Abrahamic faith into one. It gives, you know, when you're talking about Islam, it supports the Hebrew Israelite or the Hebrew ideology in a way, but it makes it much more clarified. So can you please give us more clarity on, you know, Islam, on those Hebrew prophets, and most importantly, right now, Abdul Malik being the Muhammad of the Quran?
Okay, this is probably the most controversial topic that we could discuss. When we think about Muhammad, we think of the source material that we're given to use to identify him, and they come in about 3 areas. The first is the Quran itself, which mentions Muhammad. And in the mentioning of Muhammad, it mentions Muhammad much less than any other prophet, even though Muhammad is the one that is receiving the revelation. Next, we have what we call Hadith, the various Hadith which mention the sayings of Muhammad and his Sahaba, and it gives us what we call Isnad, which are chains of transmission through certain people who were allegedly eyewitnesses of, directly or indirectly, of someone saying something or Muhammad himself saying something. And then we have history itself in the form of parchment, papyrus, epigraphy, etc., which also record a Muhammad. So that's what we are using today to filter through to find out, well, who was Muhammad, and, you know, how do we come to learn about him? Most of the religious-minded Muslims, in the sense of religious-minded meaning they stick to tradition, use the Hadith as the filter system to find out more about Muhammad than they can get from the Quran. So the problem that I have with that is that, of course, many of the Hadith come upwards of 150 to 200 years outside of the contemporary time period, one. And then when we look very closely, the progenitors of these particular Hadith appear on the face, and then when you study closely, to be anti-Quranic in thought. All right, so that's going to be really big, identifying where they are anti-Quranic in thought. All right, and can we actually form validity from what they wrote? And lastly, we come to epigraphy, papyrus, parchments, etc. This is what I have spent my time studying to cross-reference it with the Quran, and what I have found is that the history that we have been given of a Muhammad from 610 to 632 AD is a complete fabrication of Pale Arabs, absolute and complete. And when it's corresponded to the historical documents and vetted very carefully, what we find is that we have a change in calendars from a lunar, from the Arab lunar calendar, from the traditional African and original Islamic solar calendar. And inside of that, we have false dating, which can be corrected using the Quran itself. And lastly, we have the specific descriptions of Muhammad through linguistics, through everything that we have in the Quran, and how it matches the fact that there was not one mention of a Muhammad prior to Abdul Malik bringing that to us. The pretext or said epigraphical or Syriac writings on Muhammad that predate Abdul Malik are all based on supposition with no original documents. And we can go through Sabios, Sophronios, Thomas of Prepster, and all of them. And I have all of these in my book, and I have vetted each one to see if there's an original document prior to the Umm-Al initiation of the discussion of Muhammad. And what I have found is that the whole history of the Rashidun Caliphs and the pre-Umayyad history has been an invention of two specific Abbasid Caliphs, one being Harun al-Rashid and the other being Caliph al-Ma'mun, who developed and worked diligently in Baghdad to overthrow the original black Islam that came out of the Levant, the Egypt, and Northern Arabia, and from the group of people who the Quran calls Umayyah, who history calls Umayyad. That word has its genesis in the Quran itself, and the Nabi in the Quran is called an Umayyah Nabi. And this is very, very important for us to understand. So my point is that the contemporary history in Islam is all in papyrus, and the papyri were the original documents that the Quran itself and the earlier history of Islam was written on, and I can use them to check the falsifications in the Pale Arab Hadith and to verify that the Quran itself is very clear and correct on these histories. So Abdul Malik, in my stance, is the first one to use the term Muhammad to apply to himself, and that prior to that usage, the divine title of a Nabi was non-existent.
Wow. So let me get this correct. Is Abdul Malik the Muhammad, the title Muhammad that we're familiar with, or was there another personage with the attribute of Muhammad?
Well, it is my position that Abdul Malik is Muhammad, is the Muhammad who received the revelation of Quran. It is also my position that revisionists are attempting to use the falsification of history of the Arab to deny the existence of Muhammad overall. So it is because of the warped history that we are getting all of this, and I think at the end, as the dust settles, we will find out this fact. And this fact is that Muhammad was a black man who received the world's, probably one of the world's greatest revelations, and started the genesis of the world's, one of the world's greatest empires, and that Arabs and Europeans have made sure that that history would be buried forever in their minds, and that now, and in history, we can verify from the Quran itself and from ancient sources that this attempt to destroy the original Islam was done. I don't think there is another Muhammad besides the original Muhammad of the Quran. And any attempts to create one were created a century or more after him to bury this black history.
You know what? you know, there's a lot of you know, talk or chatter going on inside of the so-called Afrocentric community that Muhammad, you know, or Islam is not a black religion or black philosophy or black way of life, or Muhammad wasn't a black man himself. What are your words to that? What would you say to those people that say that Muhammad wasn't black? How can you prove, or what evidence do you have to suggest that Muhammad is indeed black?
Okay. To the people who are beginning to make those connotations, most of those people are people who are using literature that I put inside of their hands, and I'll just name their names. And they probably continue their studies. Specifically, Shaka Amos, who has been at the head of a lot of the controversy surrounding Islam. The books that I put in his hand to assist him with his study is what he is using. He is not bringing a new argument. His argument is from German revisionists, specifically Karl Ohlig and some of the others who are at the head of that particular aspect. Okay, so what proof do we have that Muhammad is indeed and in fact a black man? If we are dealing with two things, and this is very simple, and I'm going to say this and it might start a firewall of controversy, but I have to say this. The Quran itself is very clear on this concept of lineage. It uses the word duriyatun in Surah Al-Imran to describe the lineage of Adam. Adam itself unequivocally is a black man. If you peruse the Surah 15, verse ayat 26 through 29, and there are several others that talk about him being Hama. Hama is a word to describe blackness. So Adam is that. And all of the descendants of Adam fall up under that, and we're talking about all of the Nabis. I take the position that there has never been a white prophet of Allah. And I take that position because these people are of the same lineage, and that there wasn't any interruption in that lineage in that sense. So that's Quran. The original human is Hama, black, and the descendants of that original human all the way through these figures, Moses, etc., were considered black, and you can use varying things to prove that particular point. The next thing that's important is the Quran is an anti-white book. It admonishes us against the zircon, which I'll go through early, as we go. The zircon in Surah 20, verse 102, has been translated to blear-eyed, to blue-eyed, but the words absar for eye or ayin, absar for sight or ayin for eye do not appear in the verse. The word is zircon, from the word azraq, which means pale. And throughout the Lisan al-Arab, the context of early classical said Arabic, you can find that word meaning pale. So Allah would not make a prophet who is white if he is admonishing us that the pale people are mujrimina, they are guilty. And that might start some issues with racism, but you have to take that to the Quran. All right. The next issue is the Umm-Al themselves. All right. The Umm-Al themselves had what could be considered a severe tension between the Zuberids or the later pale Arabs based on this fact of their blackness. So throughout the early Muwatta or Hadith that came before Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and others, when you go back to Maliki and some of the earlier Hadith, the concept of these tribes being black was a sign of nobility. For those who want to go really deep into that, they could get the book from Dr. Wesley Muhammad, all right, Black Arabia. I'll show this book. Although I don't agree with everything in this book, there is enough source information to show that of course, the Umm-Al were black, which would make Malik black, which would make, based on my position and connotation, Muhammad black, and follow suit and synthesize with the Quran. Now, is the Quran racist? I don't think so. I think what the Quran is laying out are certain factors that we don't give the Quran credit for, and its revealer, the creator, to Muhammad, in the sense of science. And and that is another discussion that can be entertained. Which you know, it gets quite controversial, but it is there. The point that prior to Europeans having racism in this world, that there was a issue between pale races and races of hue in Africa and other places is a reality that we have to face in history. And the invasions of these pale groups into our lands was a reality that we have to face. And they show a consistent theme and behavioral dynamic that is not just something that is not rooted in the nature of the people. All right? So we can look at it however we want, but the words and the concepts are there. And the only reason they give us a problem today because we have this false sense of unity amongst our people on this planet, which is non-existent. All right, that it's a false unity. The false concepts that we are a post-racial society is bullshit. It is not true. We live in a very friction-oriented society rooted in race, and that's not all just social engineering. That has something to do with the nature of the groups of people that we are identifying that we have to become more aware of.
Okay. Real quickly then, for all those who are watching right now live, you know, if you're loving this information that you're hearing right now, please give us a big thumbs up and let us know that you like this information. You know what? I've got something special in store for you. All right, and that means I will need everybody here who's new to the channel just to hit that button right up there. You can see my face right there. Just hit the subscribe button right there, and you can. Oh my gosh! You know, our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad had just dropped a very crucial name into the mix and showed you the book. This book right here. If you can see it on the screen, Black Arabia by the legend himself, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. And Dr. Wesley Muhammad will be in the studio next month. So be prepared for that, everybody. So please hit that subscribe button, hit it down below or up here so you can be in tune when he comes on. And I know our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad has a few disagreements with Wesley Muhammad. And I would like to know, what are your disagreements with Wesley Muhammad? In a hot while, because I would love to see these two titans, these two colossals in Islam go head to head with each other in a respectful manner. And I believe that, you know, the audience, our audience who are part of the Islamic community, whether you're Moors, 5%ers, Nawapians, Sunnis, Shiites, whatever the case you may be, but you fall under the umbrella of Islam or fall under the umbrella of consciousness, this will be a very powerful debate right there. I'm personally pushing for a debate, but I don't know whether, you know, Dr. Ali Muhammad wants to debate Wesley Muhammad or not. But I'm just saying personally, I would love to see that. That would be really powerful. Okay, but you know what? Our brother just talked about, you know, the blackness of the Prophet Muhammad, etc. And I would like to actually recommend a few books, because a lot of the times we're actually reading the Hadiths, you know, from a very Iranian, Persian viewpoint, Bukhari, Muslim, etc. That's coming really in, you know, the 9th, 10th century, etc. But we actually have books that predate that. We have books such as Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham, the Sirah of the Prophet Muhammad, which is one of the first or the first autobiography of the Prophet Muhammad. You have people like what's his name now? The author of The Glory of the Blacks Over the Whites, that gives you a profound. Which one is it? Say again. Al-Jahiz. Al-Jahiz literally means the bug-eyed one, or the big-eyed one, you know, from Iraq, who was actually originally from the Kanana tribe from Ethiopia or East Africa. And he explicitly says right there the Prophet Muhammad was from a black race, etc. So you know what? You know, I think even go back into Ibn Malik Abanas, as well. So you've got a lot of these books that we don't really hear about. In the Islamic world, you don't really hear about these great authors, these great black authors that predates your Bukhari, your Muslims, and all these other hadiths. So I adjure you, please go back, look at those older literature to get a better idea of Islam and a better idea of the black heritage of those people. So, Dr. Ali Muhammad, yes, I actually asked you a question about Wesley Muhammad. So I would like to know, what are your differences with you in his work? And also, I would like to know more about your book, Lost Pages of Islam, and I'm sure you've got a presentation in store for us as well.
Absolutely. Well, with Brother Wesley, first let me commend him on being a pioneer in what we call the anthropomorphic concepts in Islam. He has done a regal job at showing the non-Hellenistic view of the early Muslims in regards to this issue of the man-God concept. All right. He also has done a heck of a job with rooting the concepts of the early Ummah in being black, and Muhammad himself, by perusing not only the classical literature of the Hadith, but the non-classical literature in the external communications, and using linguistics to prove that Muhammad was black, and to prove that the early concepts of the nobility of blackness, the black pride, the things that have been changed by the Arabs, pale Arabs. All right. Where we disagree is on this concept of Arabs. It is my position that the Quran is an anti-Arab book. It is his position that the Quran is a book from black Arabs, and that is a linguistic issue that we're probably going to have to touch on tonight in dealing with what we left off from the last time we were on the show. And the second thing is on this issue of Isa itself. He takes the position that the Isa of the Bible, or what some people misstate as the Injil, is a real figure, and that the Quran is talking in that sense in Isa about that particular figure from the first century AD. So we have those two major disagreements on whether the Quran is anti-Arab or not, or pro-black Arab, and on Isa. Because we have our foundations in the Nation of Islam, I think our concepts on Tawheed are very, very similar, except for the fact that I add in what I call astrotheology to this particular point because of what I have researched from Quran. So we have some differences. We have many similarities. We commend the brother for his work, and I would be up for a debate with anybody on Islam, because I think that it needs to be discussed, because it is the fastest growing religion amongst black people on this planet, and I, for one, want to see this Ummah clear up all of the mess that is in it, and I think we can only do that through dialogue, through this means that you have brought to us, brother, and through critical dialogue in the form of debate, because debate brings out the best in all of us. All right, it makes you study. It causes you to reach deeper as groups and as individuals into the source information to see how it applies today. So I would be up for that dialogue, because I think it will help us all in strengthening the Ummah.
1 second, real quickly, I would like to announce as well, I see that on the Talk with the Titans Facebook page, if you haven't actually joined the Talk with the Titans Facebook page as well, go join the Talk with the Titans Facebook page. We have a whole host of on there. You know, Dr. Ali Muhammad is in there, Polite is in there, Gorilla Hebrew's in there, Nas Yashavel is in there, Zion Lex is in, everybody is actually in the Talk with the Titans Facebook group. So it's a great way to actually interface with these Titans. If you go on our About Us page on the YouTube channel, if you subscribe, you'll see, you know, kind of more, you can get more of a feel of what we're trying to do, how we're trying to bring everybody together on the, you know, not just merely one banner, but to get everybody to understand each other and you know, not have that much of a conflict between each other. But on our Talk with the Titans page, our Facebook group, you know, some of the Titans in there and some people that you may not already know of has actually created an Islamic unit. an Islamic unit, and I'm pretty sure that they're ready to join up with other titans in the area of Islam to kind of bring more light and truth about Islam. So this is a great thing that's happening right now. We're officially entered into the Islamic season. We've had the Hebrew Israelites versus the Kemet science community, and we're going now into a much more of a African traditional worldview right now. So we're going to go more into Islam. We're going to go into traditional African sciences. So people from Ghana, from the Tree or the Ashanti or the Afanti or the Akan civilizations, those people, we're going to get those traditional scientists up here. We're going to get the people from Yoruba, people from Igbo land to come up and give us their perception of their religion and their traditions. So I'm just putting it out there that there is an Islamic unit that's been created and is formed. So I'm sure pretty soon you'll see them up in the forefront debating. So Dr. Ali Muhammad, back to you again. So give us a taste of your presentation. I would like to see that presentation. I would like to hear and see more of the Lost Pages of Islam, Volume 2.
Okay, absolutely. So just go right to the share, right? You want me to go ahead into the share?
Yeah, straight away.
All right. All right. Give me a moment so I can bring this up.
Let me know, audience, while waiting, let me know in the description box, in the comments box below, what you're liking and what you're not liking even. And give us your comments, give us some feedback. We love reading your feedback. If you know already, I'm always there in the comment section typing away. As we're speaking right now, I'm in the YouTube typing away. So please, don't be a stranger. This is all about participation. You actually make the show. We put on these shows for you. Okay, so please let us know your thoughts, let us know your questions that you have for Dr. Ali Muhammad. We're going to go to the 2-hour mark, so please have your questions ready for Dr. Ali Muhammad.
All right, so hopefully everyone can see this.
Yes, we can.
Can? Okay, great. So now I'm going to start off with a hot controversial topic, and it might make some people upset, but I need to knife into this a certain way. Because when we look at the world of Byzantium and Rome and what we call the Aryanization of the classical educational systems, the reason why Islam becomes so important is because Islam cut away at the Roman Aryanization of the educational systems and re-emerged or brought back the classical systems of Africa, which there was a clash, and the clash had something to do with the races, which I will prove empirically from the Quran, that the Quran admonished us that the pale races were races to watch out for. And the reason why that was there is because the context of our people getting this information, this new revelation that they got, came at a time where they were being subjugated by these pale Roman Byzantine races. Now, there were parts of Byzantine that had soldiers amongst the Amazigh and other groups that were like us. But it would be similar to a Barack Obama. Just because they looked like us didn't mean they were of us, culturally speaking. All right? So a lot of times people will say Byzantium had or Rome had black leaders. So did the United States of America. It's still the most corrupt and racist place on the earth to live in. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right. And I'm going to read. What I'm reading is from page 53 of the Lost Pages of Islam, Volume 2. All right. And I want you to follow me on this. All right. Abdul Malik's, Muhammad's enemies, were described in Quran as Zirkan, or pale. These groups included the Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Kharijites, and Persians. Abdullah ibn Zubair, a pale Arab who proclaimed himself leader of Mecca, was the early and primary Arabian enemy of the Umayyad. That's important, and that person is important. Ibn Zubair. All right. Next, we have straight from the Quran itself. All right. Let's go back. All right. We have Surah Taha, verse Surah 20, verse 102. All right, and that particular verse, this is a retranslation of it from my translation. The day when the trumpet is blown, we shall gather together the zircon, all right, pale skin or pale people who are considered mujrimina, guilty, all right. Now, how does Ali know that the word zircon or azraq or zirk means pale? Because it was consistently used throughout the Islamic classical said Arabic, and when the word was used, it meant pale. All right. So here I have a extraction from Al-Jinniyah.
One second, my brother. One second, my brother Ali Malik. Is it possible to zoom in? Our audience on YouTube aren't able to see it so clearly.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna zoom in. All right, let me make it bigger.
Thank you.
All right, zoom. Let's go a little bit bigger. All right, let's go. Tell me if this makes it proper. Let's see.
Okay, everybody in YouTube land, please let us know if you are able to see it. Okay.
Can y'all still see that?
Let me have a look.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it possible to
Tell
make it any bigger?
tell me if this is bigger.
Could you make it a little bit more bigger?
Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me try. Let's see. Let's take it up. Hold on 1 second. Let's make it a little bit bigger. How about that?
Wow, that's beautiful. That's perfect.
Okay. All right. So we're in the Quran itself, Surah Taha, which is Surah 20. All right, Ayah 102, and we're translating it. And I'm going to go through the language of this, so you can get this. All right. All right. So I just read from that particular surah. All right, which is right here. The translation is right here. And now I'm going to a classical poem from Ibn al-Rumi where he uses the word or the root word for zircon or zirk, which is a variance of it, which is azraq. And he's saying to the pale Arabs, you insulted them, and he's talking about the family of Muhammad, because of their blackness. All right? So he's saying that they were black at this particular time, while there are still pure-blooded, black-skinned Arabs. However, you are azraq, which is zirk or zircon, pale. The Romans, who are the Byzantines, have embellished your persons with their color. So Ibn al-Rumi was talking to these pale Arabs at the time who were beginning this white supremacist kind of concept in Islam. But the problem with Surah 20 verse 102 is that Muhammad Ali, Yusuf Ali, and many of the other translators use the word blear-eyed or blue-eyed for that translation. And if you've ever seen that translation, or you can open up your Qurans now, you'll see that I'm about to absolutely destroy that fallacy. All right? So here we go. The Quran teaches that judgment will be brought upon the zircon, who are the guilty ones. And the word that's used there is al-mujrimina. That's the transliteration into English. The word has been translated as blue-eyed as well as blear-eyed. The interesting thing is that the words for eye or sight, absar and ayin, do not appear in the verse. So my first challenge is for anybody to find the word absar or ayin or any other word for eye in that verse. If you can't, then that was something of what we call an interpolation by the scholars, whether they be Muhammad Ali, the Indian scholars, or the Arab ones, or Yusuf Ali, or Pickthall, or whoever they may be. They're inserting that where the word does not appear. And that's what you call intentional mistranslation. All right? The Quran is clear that it does use color to speak of the conditions of the eye. All right? As in Surah 12, verse 84, where Prophet Jacob's eyes are called abyadat aynahu. All right? Meaning literally the loss or the waning of sight. All right? And abyadat is the whitening of the eye. All right? From ba'id, which means white. All right? As in ayn, which implies sight, or absar, which implies the physical eye. In the next verse, his son speaks to effect of his grieving over Joseph causing a disease. So here we have the abyadat ainahu, or the waning of sight, is called a harad, or a disease. So now Jacob in the Quran is considered blind because he's losing his sight. And what's happening to his eyes is, in science we call it the loss of the macula. The macula is black. So as the blackness in your eye degenerates, you can lose your sight and get a disease. Now, biology is rooted in creation. So we don't have to argue about things minus science. Any biologist or physicist can pick up on what is being communicated. The waning and the loss of sight here means macular degeneration, which is the loss of the black hue of the macula of the eye, loss of which is a contributor to blindness of the eye. The attenuation, a physics term meaning the ability to absorb light or light waves of the eyes, are lost when the black part, the melanated macula, begins to degenerate. Thus the word abyada, meaning white, here means the color frequency that does not allow for the absorption of light, which is necessary for biological functioning of the eyes and the production of ayn, or sight. Usually when the Quran speaks of someone lacking sight or spiritual sight, the word ayn is used. The lack of having any word for either sight or the word absar for the physical eyes in verse 102 of Surah 20 dismisses the translation of a blear-eyed or a blue-eyed. All right? So now when we go further into this verse, this is important. The commentary of Ibn al-Manzur in Lisan al-Arab sums it up. Lisan al-Arab is the 11th century Islamic grammar text composed by Ibn Manzur and stands as one of the most favorite texts used to understand grammar in Islam and classical language studies in Islam. And there are other ones that I think are better that are earlier, but I'm using this one because this is popular amongst people. Lisan al-Arab says of Azraq or Zerk, blue or pale. According to Ibn Sayyida, Azraq is whiteness wherever it may be, and Azraq is green or blue in the blackness or darkness of one's eyes. It is said, it is when darkness or blackness of the eye is overpowered by blue, pale, or whiteness. So now you have it from the classical Arabic dictionaries, you have it from the Quran itself, and you have it from classical poetry of the time that the word Zerk, Zerkan, or Azraq means pale. So ask Ali Muhammad a question. Why has every translator of the Quran in the known world skipped over the fact that the Quran is admonishing us against pale races? And the answer absolutely is that the context for the revelation of the Quran has been completely removed from history. And when we reinsert it into its reality, what we find out is that the Quran itself, as a warning to the group of people who the scriptures were revealed to, is warning these black races against these invading pale white races who are now trying to lead the blacks in Islam today. So point number one is, no one can tell me I am racist because I am weary of white people because Allah revealed it. And if I am incorrect, you correct me from the Quran. Don't correct me from the Hadith. Don't correct me from any other source except the revelation as a Muslim that you say is from Allah. All right? That's point number one.
So Muslims out there, okay, I'm calling on you Muslims out there. Since you're unable to call in right now, I am challenging you. No, furthermore, Dr. Ali Muhammad is challenging you to prove him wrong on that point. Was the Quran talking about blue eyes, bleared eyes, clear eyes, or was it actually talking about skin complexion, the clear skin, the white skin, the pale skin races? So I'm going to challenge you. Leave me your comments down below in the comment box because I would love to hear what you have to say, and I'm going to pass on all of those comments to Dr. Ali Muhammad right now, or if you're watching it pre-recorded, you know, get on the Facebook group and talk to him about it.
All right, so we're going to continue?
Go ahead.
All right, so that's point number one. We got past that. They can make commentary on that and go to that. So let me go back to this issue of whether the Quran is anti-Arab. All right. Now, in starting this discussion, I want to highlight the fact, and I'm going to show this surah, in the original language, which some people say is Arabic. So because the language is supposed to be Arabic, how is Ali saying the Quran is anti-Arabic? All right, and we started this discussion the last time, but we didn't finish it, and I want to finish it as best I can. All right, so here you have from Surah 9, all right, verse 101. It starts actually in Surah 97, where the Quran is admonishing. Actually, let me do this. Let me see if I can go back to that one. Yeah, that particular one, because I have the transliteration, and I have the original language, and I have a translation. Okay. Now, context again in understanding Islam. You had the Eastern Orthodox Roman Byzantine Empire. You had the Sassanids. You had the western part of the empire, and then you had the blacks in Africa and the Levant and the Middle East and Northern Arabia. There was another group of people who history calls the Ghassanids or the Lakhmids. These groups of people today we call Arabs. All right? The oldest inscription for an Arab is given of a Ghassanid king. All right? Which we show in this text. So here we have the Quran admonishing us and admonishing really about the message that is being delivered to Muhammad. That these groups, this is one of the groups. There were many groups that were highlighted as kuffar, or who would hold disbelief about the messages. In Surah 9, ayah 97 through 99, you have this, and I'll read my translation, and then I'll go to the original language so you can see it, and then I'll show you what the transliteration says. The verse, as I translate it, says, the Arabs are the strongest in kufarun, or disbelief, and hypocrisy, all right? And most disposed to not be truly aware of the laws of what Allah has revealed to his messenger being Muhammad. And Allah is knowing and wise. So what most translators do is they take this word right here, alif, lam, alif, ain, ra, alif, ba, al-arabi, all right? Al-arab, or arabu, here, because it has the U sound. They take this word and turn it into dwellers of the desert. All right? They'll say the dwellers of the desert. And the reason why they're doing that is to hide the fact that the word Arab is there, because they want you to believe that the Arabs are the receivers of the revelation via Muhammad of Quran, and are the head or the people who Allah revealed this book to via Muhammad. And that is an absolute lie. The Quran is an anti-Arab book, and this verse begins the discussion on it. Okay? It starts it. But it does not end there. It continues throughout verses throughout the Quran. And when you look at Pickthall's translation, Yusuf Ali's translation, all these other translations, they take out Arab and they place the translation to be dwellers of the desert. Now, some people believe that this type of Arab is the dweller of the desert, and therefore the use of the alif before the ayn is distinguishing one type of Arab from another. But we're going to deal with that. But first, we have right on face value that the word Arab is there in the original language, and I translated it for you. So if we keep going on, the Quran continues this concept, and it says, and those around you of the hypocrite Arabs, all right? And those of the people of Medina, they persist in hypocrisy, Check this out, how the revelation is given. It says, you do not know them. We know them. We chastised them twice, then we returned them to great levels of punishment. So the word again is consistently being used. Now, the argument against Arab being a term that specifically and only identifies the Arabs is the fact that in Surah 1602, ayat 12, Surah 12:2, and other ayats, you have this word, and I'll show it to you, that is being translated as Arabic. All right? And I'll take this to Surah 41, ayah 44. All right? Now, I covered this in the Lost Pages of Islam, Book 1, but here's where I want to really anchor this. The use of the term that most people in these surahs are translating to Arabic or Arabiya, I have a challenge for you. And the challenge is that the contemporary texts of the Umm-Al do not, I repeat, do not translate that term as Arabic. All right? They translate it as Garibi. Now, in order to understand the context of how this is used, you have to use the classical literature of the Umm-Als. There's a text, and please write this down. This will become a great part of your study, called Madina al-Nuhas. I think I have it on this slide. All right? Let's see if I can highlight it. I do. I'm highlighting it right now. It's called Madina al-Nuhas. This was a text that was written by Abdul Malik and one of the scholars of his day called Al-Shabi. All right? Al-Shabi wrote Madina al-Nuhas to speak of the mythical kingdom of Solomon. All right? And this city was called the Yellow City, or the City of Brass. All right? But inside of this text, for the first time, there's a term that is introduced to describe the miracles and the marvels of how Allah works, and the term is Ajaib Garib. All right? Ajaib Garib. And I have it right here. All right? Let's see if I put it in here. Because these two words occur in the Quran. All right? Here it is. This is the root of the word from Madina al-Nukas. So you can start Googling that right now while we're on here, and you'll see that that's a real text in the Umm-Al classical history. Now, the reason why Ajaib Garib is important is because it describes how Allah creates what is a miracle. Al-Jaib is considered a marvel, and Garib was considered something that was miraculous and perfect. All right? Miraculous and perfect. And Garib was also used as something that is strange. All right? So the word Garib had multiple meanings, and then later it was associated with the West. All right? So we got three meanings: miraculous and perfect and complete. All right? That's the first meaning, which is a feat that is carried out by the Creator or someone inspired by the Creator. The second is something that is strange. All right? And the third is the term means something Western, something of the West. Like you get the word Maghrib, which at the root has the word Garib in it. All right? So why is that important to Surah 41, Ayah 44? Because when we are translating this term to mean Arabiya, it is my position that the Quran is discussing two words. All right? The root word for something that is foreign that is used there is ajam. All right? And the root word for something that is strange is garib. All right? So when we look at this verse right here, all right, and we see these two words right here, Ajamiu, wa, and here the diacritical dot is not there. So it's read Arabiya. All right? And when we look at the verse and translate it, most translators will translate it different than what I have. All right? So you see the term Western there. All right? But what we're trying to say, and I'm going to read this right out. Hold on. Let me go back. Shoot. All right. The use of the term Ajamiu wa Garibi, or if translated Ajamu Arabi, foreign Arabic, juxtaposed to Holy Quran, Surah 16:103, Garabiya Mubin. All right? Clear and complete, as in a miracle. All right, so when you go to 16:103, that verse is talking about the Quran. And some Qurans have it, and I'll turn right to it with my Quran here so I can actually read it for you. And it says, indeed, we know that they say only a mortal teaches him. The tongue of him whom they hint at is foreign, and this is clear Arabic language, is how Muhammad Ali translates it. All right? So the word that's used there is Arabiya Mubin. My position is that it's saying Garabiya Mubin, which is perfect and clear to describe the language of the Quran. Hold on. Losing my place. All right. Okay. So the author's contention that Afro-Asiatic languages derived from Niger-Congo languages is a subject that has been taken up by linguists. Garabiya is derived from Al-Shabi's Medina al-Nuhas and was composed with Abdul Malik to speak of the miraculous city of fame in scriptures. Ajaib Garib means marvels and miracles from Allah. Garib was used in association with Allah from his first rendering amongst the Umayyad and the Umayyad Nabi, Abdul Malik, the Muhammad. It makes sense then to make Garibi Mubin to mean clear and complete in respect to the miraculous message revealed from Allah to Muhammad. The Umayyad Papyri Quran do not have a diacritical dot over this word, and thus with their anti-Arab stance already proclaimed in the message of the Quran, it would be senseless for them to associate these Afro-Asiatic languages with being from a people they considered inferior, uncivilized, and steeped in kuffar, disbelief in the message of Allah. So how can I continue to back that up? If that verse is saying that the person's tongue will be foreign and there will be a stranger, I'm going to use classical Umm-Al concepts about Arabs. All right? This is from Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, Abdul Malik's general in Iraq. And this is his quote that he gave about using the poetry and writings of Arabs. And the quote says, this concerns the Rijaz, the writings or the poetry of the Arabs. By Allah, if I find anyone who will read it, I will kill him, and I will even rub his misrepresented writings, the mushaf, all right, with a side of pork. So it was a consistent theme throughout the empire of the early black Muslims to have an anti-Arab stance, because the Ghassanids and Lakhmids were underlords for the Romans, and they worked and they allied with the Romans against the Muslims. So much so that it led to a war against the early Umayyad Muslims, what is being termed a civil war now, but it wasn't a civil war. It was a war against the Muslims, against these Romanized Arabs who were underlords. All right? And the Quran, in the use of the word Garibi Mubin, is showing you the Quran is perfect and clear. And in verse 41, 44, here, keep running out of my space. Here, the term should be Garibi, as used to mean something foreign or strange, because the context of this entire verse is dealing with a foreigner who's coming with a foreign language and something strange. And the Quran lays out to the community that they would not bring a foreigner or a stranger to reveal a text to the people of the Ummah. That the revelation would be clear. It would be something that would be easy to understand, which is often highlighted in the Quran. And lastly, my point on this particular point, when we look at the etymology of the language itself in the Quran, what we find out is that it is derivative of the ancient Afro-Asiatic language scripts. All right, the Nabatean, the Punic, the Ge'ez, all right, all of the languages, what we are calling Hebrew today, all of the languages in that area had the same alphabet and the same root words and meanings. All right. So if we are going to be taught said Arabic, we should be taught the derivative languages. And the reason why that is important is because all of those derivative languages go back to black people. None of them go back to the Ghassanids or the Lakhmids, who did not develop any writings or any language. The language itself, the lettering, the alphabet, the grammar, and the syntax comes from a tradition that goes all the way back into the Levant, the Hijaz, and the Nilotic Sudan amongst the people who developed these languages. And now we have a group of people who have heisted the language, named it after themselves, and even though they are considered in the book a people who are looked upon as kuffar, which they are proven today they are kuffar, we still hold to use their name for the name of the language in the revelation. And that is what I call one of the biggest psyops that could have ever happened in the history of Islam, to name the language after a group of people who were against the original message. All right? So we can peruse that and look at that second point, because that second point will become, a highly critiqued point when we get into the nisbahs and how this language is developed.
Just to stop you real quickly, because our audience are a bit confused for some strange reason. They're saying right now, how can it not be Arabic, or how can it not be from an Arab when Muhammad was an Arab? How can the Quran be an anti-Arab book when the founder of it was an Arab?
Right.
So is there any light you can regarding to the Prophet Muhammad's lineage?
All right, absolutely. Now, here again we go. What are we going to use to define the lineage of the Prophet?
So I'll repeat, the audience members.
Yeah? Are you there?
Okay, I'll just repeat the question. This one is coming from Jelani Hadi. The Quran is an anti-Arab book, but it was revealed by an Arab. I don't get it. So is there any information you can give to this person or to the audience?
Absolutely. All right. My first question to Brother Jelani is, where do you derive the belief that Muhammad was an Arab? And the ultimate answer cannot be from the Quran. It has to be from a group of literature that we call Hadith. So, Brother Jelani, take a look at this slide that I'm about to show you, and it will solve your problem with this issue of where your belief is coming from. All right? Here we go. Jelani, if you're looking at the slide, this is where your belief is coming from. It's not coming from the Quran. All right? It's coming from what we call Hadith. All right? Here we have Bukhari, which is approximately 870, which is over 200 years. All right? Muslim, 875. Abu Dawood, Al-Tirmidhi, Al-Nasa, Ibn Majah, and then we have other writings. Ask yourself a question. Where are the contemporary writings of Muhammad? Where are the contemporary texts that were written from his time? You believe that Muhammad was an Arab based on the fact that Arabs came 200 years later and told you he was an Arab. Go to the contemporary text and then tell me what can be used to tell what Muhammad was or who Muhammad was. So take a screenshot of this page because I'm about to skip to another page that's going to help you. All right? Take a screenshot, take a picture, take a look at it so you can get those dates. All right? Because I'm going to show you your belief is the problem, not what I'm showing you. Your belief is the problem, and it is only a belief. All right? So next, I'm going to scroll back. So give me a moment to go to what would be contemporary documents. All right? Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look from some scholars to see what a contemporary document would be. I'll use this woman. Y'all want to use white people? Let's use white people who are actually studying something. Did Muhammad exist? And what are the contemporary documents? All right? Some skeptical scholars that claim that Muhammad did not exist, or let's say in this case, he's an Arab, and that Islam is a fabrication made up in later centuries through Hadith. All right? That's what they're talking about. But Leiden University's Petra Sejepstein has demonstrated from her work on Arabic papyrus manuscripts that their claim is not true. What was the origin of Islam and what went on at the dawn of Islamic history? In the past, scholars who wanted to research the subject had to rely on the official Arab versions of events in the Hadith, which was not only written down about 200 years after Muhammad's death, only relatively recently has interest grown in more objective but less accessible sources such as coins, inscriptions, and texts written on papyrus. Oh, my bad. Hold on. This professor of Arabic language and culture at Leiden University says that this last source is especially important. And this is a quote from her. The papyri are in fact the only contemporary source for the first 200 years of Islamic history. All right, so that's one scholar saying it. Now let's keep going. Let's go back. Let's go to the Quran itself, and let's take a look at what the Quran says about what it was written on. Let's take a look at this. All of these points are critical. I'm coming straight from the Quran. So follow me and follow me on this Muhammad not being an Arab. We have to show and prove through specific things. Muhammad is said to have been in an elevated part of the horizon when he first met a great and powerful teacher whom came to reveal the Quran to him. This is from Surah 53 of the Holy Quran, called Al-Najm, the first about 10 verses. Ancient texts use the title Jibril for this figure. The Quran is clear in Surah Al-An'am that the Mala'ikat are men. So that means a man came to teach Muhammad. Surah 6, verses 6 through 9 say the Mala'ikat are men. All right? It uses the word Rajul, men. So let's not get spooked out. Even if they have power, it still says they are men. This man, in Arab tradition, is said to have commenced revelation in a mountain called Mount Hira in Mecca. Investigation proves Hira was first the city of the Ghassanid Arabs in what would be known today as Iraq. The only mountain mentioned by name in the Quran is Mount Sinai. See Surah Al-10, the Fig, 95th Surah, verse 2. The Sinai was the home of these groups, Saracens, Blemmyes, and Nobades, whom the Byzantine Romans detested and whom later took the attributes of Muslims. In the surah called the mountain, Al-Tur, where a revelation is commenced, the Quran is said to be a book written on Kitabin Masturin, all right, on Rakin Manshurin. This term has been translated as unfolded vellum by most scholars, yet history proves that the first Qurans were written on papyrus as the source material for writing Qurans during the Umayyad period, before which we have no Qurans. There's a whole bunch of myths, but there's no Qurans. The Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik provided the world with the first epigraphical and written Qurans. These Qurans were written on papyrus. The words Rakin Manshureen should be retranslated. Manshureen comes from the root Nashara. So if you don't have a said classical Arabic dictionary, get one, Lizana Arab, Hans Ware, whatever you want, and look up the word Nashara, which is the root of Manshureen, which is defined in Hans Ware Dictionary of Modern Written Arabic as to publish or to make known or to see. Manshureen here then means to witness a work or a rakin, which we take the position means papyri. Papyri are the original source of writing Qurans, and this plant did not grow anywhere in Arabia. It grew in the same location that authentic history tells us the Muslims originated in the Nilotic Sudan. So here's a quote from the oldest papyrus studier, Adolf Groen, where he makes a statement about the papyrus plant. Groen dealt fully with these writing materials amongst the Arabs, citing numerous Arabic sources which prove that Arabic literature abounds in references to the papyrus plant, its different parts, and its rich and varied uses. Groen points out that while it is not in itself impossible that the papyrus plant grew or still grows in parts of Arabia, its presence there has to date not been proved. The Egyptians had early found some uses for every part of the plant. The bloom was used for garlands, the shrine for offerings, the root for utensils, the fuel, etc. So my point is that papyrus only grew in the place that the Saracens, Nobades, and Blimmies were, and these were the first names used for the Muslims by the Byzantines. And not only do we have that particular point from the Quran and from nature about the papyrus itself, let's go back. Because if Muhammad is an Arab, you have to prove it to me. I don't have to prove it to you. Here we go. I'm going to prove it though. Go right back to the Quran. If Muhammad was an Arab, why would he be saying these things about the Arabs, since this is the Quran that was revealed to him? This is from the surahs that were revealed to Muhammad or given to him as revelation from another man who the text calls Jibril, who was his teacher. So in the Quran itself, it says that the Arabs are kuffar and most disposed not to be truly aware of the laws of what Allah has revealed to his messenger. So the Quran itself is anti-Arab. It was revealed to Muhammad, who could not have been an Arab, because of these messages. And the only verse that I've ever seen people try to use to substantiate that is the verse from Surah Al-Fusilat, Surah 41, verse 44, which they translate that particular word to Arab, all right? To an Arab receiving the revelation. So to my brother Jelani and to everyone else, you believe that Muhammad is an Arab based on works that came 200 years after he lived. So you have to do some self-correction, or what you're saying is you're co-signing what the Pale Arabs have done, and you are overstepping, ignoring, or putting to the side this type of information that I would bring to you to make it clear that the Quran itself is not a pro-Arab book.
Wow, oh my days. You know what? I know, listen, Isa, if you're there, listen, I know you have something to say. Muslims listening right now, I know you have something to say. Because, to be honest, I think this is going to contradict your personal beliefs based upon what you know. I'm not too sure you've gone into the papyrus text that says something different, so I know you don't have something to say right about now. Before that happens, I want to get this last question out there, and then we're going to open up the lines for questions and commentary from our panelists and from our YouTube audience. And this question is, it ties in, it relates to this. And, you know, there is this talk about Mecca. There's the talk about Becca or Bacca. And, you know, doing the research, I'm gonna have to put my hands up and admit, I haven't actually found any research that substantiates that you know, the present day Mecca or the present day where the Kaaba is right now was the original spot of Mecca or Bacca. So I want to know, Dr. Ali Muhammad, where is the original Mecca, or is that originally the place of pilgrimage? Is the Mecca of today the original place of pilgrimage, or was there somewhere else?
All right, so in order to understand this question, we have to deal with what we call the Qibla. All right, Mecca is currently considered the Qibla in Islam, which means that, you know, all Muslims are supposed to face this sacred site because it is the home and the genesis of Islam. All right?
One second, we can't see you. Can't see you. Could you show yourself?
You want me to show me? Okay, you want to show myself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. So this issue of Mecca and Becca, Mecca is considered the Qibla currently of Islam. And for those who are unfamiliar with what the term Qibla means, Qibla is supposed to mean the place where we turn our attention, and there are ayat in the Quran which tells or directs Muhammad to establish a Qibla. All right, a Qibla in this sense being allegedly Mecca, the place where we should face, because that's where this genesis of the revelation starts. Okay, there's problems with that. All right, the problems with that is the early mosque of Islam, the first mosque that were built, all right, primarily by the Umm-Al, all right, and then on, there's something in the mosque called a mihrab. The mihrab is the place that the imam faces in order to face the Qibla to pray towards, you know, Mecca. And the mihrab is supposed to always face the Qibla. An analysis of the early masjids, or what we're calling mosque, the French word, whatever, shows that they always face the winter solstice position, and that they were tailored towards the rising and the setting of the sun at the winter solstice. The reason why this is important is because not only does the architecture prove that there were intentional astronomical alignments to the sun, all right, but the Quran itself verifies that when we deal with the concept of Qibla, or where we should direct ourselves in prayer, during Salat, we are given a Salat that is synchronized with solar movements. All right? This synchronization with solar movements is tied to the calendar system, and it is tied to what the Qibla really is, and it is tied to the marking of Ramadan, the proper marking of Ramadan based on astronomical data. All right? So right now, Ramadan shifts every year 11 days because they are following a 354-day calendar, right? You can go right to Surah 18, Ayah 25, and you can see that Muhammad himself is made to speak and state that there's a difference between the lunar calendars that were in use around them by the Byzantines and the Arabs, and the solar calendar which was used by the Muslims. And the story in the Quran is talking about Al-Kahf, the cave, and the companions of the cave. So in that ayah, which I don't have open in front of me, but I pretty much remember it, it basically is calculating the years by which these people were in the cave, and it gives the number 300 years, and then it says, and they, the other people, add 9 years, which means it's 309 years. So in this book, which I have to get to the actual page, I have it in there where we show 300 solar years, all right, solar tropical years based on the movement of the sun adds up to a certain amount of days, and when you divide that by 354, you get 309 years. So the 309 years was used by the they that Muhammad is talking about, not the we that he was a part of. The we that he was a part of use a solar calendar. The they use a 354-day calendar, and the they were not the Muslims. They were the outside communities. So everybody that's using a 354-day calendar to calculate Ramadan is not using the original calendar, and they're not practicing Ramadan based on the Quran. Now, why is that important to the Qibla and Mecca? It is important to the Qibla and Mecca because the original place, the original first place that was used to make pilgrimage is said in Islamic history in the Hadith to be Jerusalem, and that Muhammad switched it. Muhammad didn't switch it. The Arabs switched it. Muhammad was in Jerusalem at the Masjid al-Haram. The first place in history that's called Masjid al-Haram is today called the Dome of the Rock. And it was reconstructed by Abdul Malik, and that reconstruction was in a holy site, and the people before him, who were called the Saracens, were using that site, and he only came and reconstructed it, all right? And they even used the term Kaaba for that particular place. So there was a war in Islam between Ibn Zubair and Abdul Malik over this Hajj issue, so much so that Abdul Malik sent his general Hajj to burn down what we are calling today the Kaaba, which was not the sacred place of pilgrimage. The sacred place of pilgrimage, which I can show from papyrus, all right, was in Jerusalem, and the Hajj was called for by Abdul Malik, and he called even his officials from Egypt to make the trip from Fustat in Egypt into Al-Ilya, or what we are calling Jerusalem, or Al-Quds, all right, Jerusalem, to make Hajj. That was the place that they made Hajj. But when we dealt with the Qibla itself was based on astronomy and the sun, all right? So there was no facing Jerusalem at that time or any of those things. The Qibla was based on astronomy. It had nothing to do, and that astronomical culture comes out of the Nile Valley. There's no other place where it could come from other than the Africans or the blacks who, in my vantage point, continued it when they originated Islam. So when we start dealing with Becca, the word Becca is used in ancient literature, even in the Old Testament, for a valley in Jerusalem. All right? So you can go to, I forget the actual verse, but it's in the book of Psalms, the valley of Becca. The valley of Becca was considered a valley in Jerusalem. And that's where the word comes from. All right? And then in ancient texts, Becca meant the place of the rising sun in the Medu-Neter, the Egyptian languages. I have it in these slides, and I'll be able to show it to you. So when we talk about Becca being the original place, it is my position that it was the original place that was designated in Al-Ilya or Jerusalem, and I have the proof that the pilgrimages were being made to that place, and it was later the Pale Arabs, the Ghassanids under Ibn Zubair, who started the attempt to overthrow where the pilgrimage would come at, and this is discussed in the Quran, that they would set up another place. The word Mecca, as used today in ancient history, was not used for that particular city. All right, that is an interpolation that came later. So my point is that you cannot understand Islam, you cannot understand the original Islamic calendar by following Pale Arabs. They will have you following a lunar calendar of 354 days that is against the Quran, that distorts where the Qibla was, and distorts the fact that Ramadan is aligned to the vernal equinox every year in the 9th month from, the winter solstice every year from the 9th month from the vernal equinox, which is how we kept time. We kept time from spring, vernal equinox, to the 9th month, which was the winter solstice. And the winter solstice represented the 27th day and the longest night of the year, which is why we called it Laylat al-Qadr. Laylat al-Qadr is the night of power in Ramadan, and it is considered the most sacred night because it is the night that Muhammad is said to have received this revelation. For those of us who study astronomy, we know that the winter solstice is the longest night of the year. All right? So that time period was based on ancient tradition, which is why in the Quran, in surahs like Surah Al-Furqan, the disbelievers accuse Muhammad of bringing back stories from the ancient. All right? These are stories from the ancients. They were stories from the ancients in the sense of they were traditionally of African tradition, but they were revealed to Muhammad to raise the banner of Islam.
Okay. You know what? Sadly, we're reaching the end of the show, and I know our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad has so much more to give and so much more to say. So what I'm going to try to do is get all your questions answered really quickly, really sharply, and I'm going to try to, I'll end the show and try to extend it. Okay, so you can have more words with Dr. Ali Muhammad. I'll try to get a number out to you to actually ring in to speak with Dr. Ali Muhammad. So first of all, I'm going to open the lines right now, real quickly, to our brother Alvin. Alvin, I see that you're in here. You're dying to ask our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad a question. So shoot away. Okay. So I'm going to open it now to our brother Isa. Isa, if you've got any questions for the brother, please ask away.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You're right, fam. I told you, brother, it was coming to this, but okay. The first thing is, in verse, or chapter 41, verse 44.
Okay.
Do you recognize that verse?
Yes, sir. We were talking about it a little earlier. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know what the Arabic indication for a question is in that verse?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you indicate what that is?
Hold on 1 second, my brother Isa. There's only one question. We're limited to one question.
Okay.
So if I can just ask you to ask that one question.
Okay. Let me jump to another one then. Okay. Simply, I guess we'll go to chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
Verse 99.
99.
Yep. Do you want to, can you read that out and then explain that in relation to what you claim about the desert Arabs?
Okay. Hold on, let me get to it. I actually have that in here, so let me get to it. Hold on.
Dr. Ali Muhammad, is it possible for the audience to see you?
Oh, they want to see me? Well, you know what? I wanted to show this verse that he's talking about because I have this verse in the book.
Okay.
All right,
so it's 9 verse 99. Wa minal al-Arabi man yaminu billahi wal yawmil akhiri wa yatakhizilu. If I'm not mistaken, my Arabic is a bit poor right now. I haven't spoken in a while.
All right, all right, so verse 99. All right?
Yeah,
verse
you got it?
I'm right at it.
Okay. It's not the one on the screen, though.
No, it's not. That's
Okay.
That's 44.
Okay. Do you want to read it, or shall I read it?
No, you can read. Go ahead, read.
Okay. So
I want to come to my slide on that. I have
Okay.
a contest for that. Hold on.
Okay.
Keep reading.
Okay, so it says, and of the dwellers of the desert, which are the desert Arabs, are those who believe in Allah and the last day, and take what they spend to be the nearness of Allah and the Apostle. So, in relation, surely it shall be a means of nearness for them. Allah will make them enter into His mercy. Surely Allah is forgiving, the most merciful. So the same word is used here, which is the Arab or Al-Arab, which you find in the other verses, which talk about them being the worst in hypocrisy and the worst in kufr, etc. So this one is specifically referring to the good people, and in both verses it's saying it's using the word min, which means from, of. So it's a section or some of them. So when you bring up the one you've got on your screen now, talk again, and those around you of the Arabs and of the people of Medina. I mean, you've even got the people of Medina. So, you know, this can't be, as you're trying to say, that the Arabs and Muhammad and the Quran are an enemy of Arabs. Yeah? But
Okay.
you continue.
Okay, so let's go back. Before you read verse 99, let's go back to verse 98. Because I started at 97, and there's something missing. There's a context that's missing, all right? So after 97, which I read here, they're the strongest disbelief, etc., it goes on to say, and the dwellers of the desert, or the Arabs, are those who take what they spend to be a fine. And they wait for an evil turn of fortune for you. On them is the evil turn, and Allah is here and gone. And of the desert Arabs, all right. Yeah,
this is 99 now, right?
That was verse 98. I gotta follow.
Right.
Hold on. Yeah, that was
That's
verse
right.
98. Coming to 99.
Right.
Wow. I gotta find this verse. But this is what I want to. This is where I want to go. I want to go word for word. All right. Hold on, because I have to find this.
So everybody who's listening right now, if you're loving this information that our brother Dr. Ali Muhammad is giving, give us a big thumbs up. Let us know that you love this information. Next week, well, if you don't know, our shows are weekly. Every single Wednesday we are on. Every single Wednesday we are on. And I believe next week we have the Black Lotus Civilization passing through the studios. We have brothers from Cameroon passing through the studio, brothers from the Nigeria passing through the studio as well. So stay tuned to all of those episodes and hit that subscribe button right up there if you haven't already subscribed, and stay in tune with everything that we have to offer. As I said already, we're going through an Islamic season at the moment. We've got some great Islamic scholars coming through to the studios. We've also got some great traditional African practitioners passing through the studios. We've also got some great people from the UK as well passing through the studios. So please hit that subscribe button and stay in tune. If you love this information as well, give us that big thumbs up. We love and appreciate that.
All right. So, Brother Isa, this is my point on this, and
Yep.
my point on this is verse 98 brings up, or brings into context, the Arabs who consider what they spend or they offer to be a fine. Your verse comes, about verse 99, and says of these same Arabs that they do believe. All right, they are believers in Allah, and it uses the word for believers in Allah and the last day, and consider what they spend and the prayers of the messenger as bringing them nearer to Allah. So these verses are comparing the Arabs to one another, groups of Arabs. Would you agree with that?
It's talking about the desert Arabs specifically. So those
right,
around,
so,
yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. All right, so it's talking about the desert Arabs, and it's comparing. The comparison in 98 and 99 deals with those who believe in the message and spend of themselves, and those who don't, right?
Hold on, brother. The point was that when you read out,
I want either agreement, because I'm coming to verse 100.
I know, but I don't want us to go away from what the point was.
Okay, go
your
ahead.
statement in your presentation was that the Quran and Muhammad were anti-Arab, based upon the verse. Hold on, let me finish. Based upon the verse that you read, which is saying that they're hypocrites and they're worst in hypocrisy, and they are worst in kufr or disbelief. And I'm saying, reading out that verse to support the idea that the Quran is anti-Arab, and Muhammad is anti-Arab and not an Arab, only makes sense if you read that one verse without 99, which tells you that it's talking about the people around, as in you have the city Arabs and the desert Arabs, and the statement is about the desert Arabs. Muhammad was born where? In Mecca, right? According to the tradition, let's say. I'm just saying according to tradition. What my point is to you, there's two types.
I feel you.
So when it says Medina, right? Do you agree the word Medina means city?
No, but the word Medina means city, but it does not mean the Medina that we're talking about. And you would
Okay,
have to
okay.
use textual Islamic history to decipher that. But go ahead.
Okay, but my point is, in the verse that you've got in front of us on the screen, and it
Right.
says, and those around you of the hypocrite Arabs and
Right.
of the people of Medina. So
Right.
you've got the people, the desert Arabs, and you've got the city Arabs. So you've got the contrast in the very verse you're quoting. And you've
Right.
got good amongst them and bad amongst them. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay.
All right, so my point is to you that the distinguishment of my point that the Quran is an anti-Arab book must use the next verse, which is 100, where it talks about the actual people of the book. And the Arabs, these people, the Arabs, have been interpolated through Hadith and tradition as being the people who have the prophet who are receiving the message. My particular point is in two parts. And that two parts is Muhammad himself is not an Arab. The groups of people are discussed in verse 100, and those groups of people are called the Muhajirina, all right, or the people of the Hijra, right? I take that to be also a mistranslation. And the reason why I take it to be a mistranslation is because when you look at the early history of Islam, the Hijaz was the place to identify these particular people, so they were the people of the Hijaz. And that Ra should be a Za, or a Z sound. But without going through all of that, the Muhajirina and the Ansar and these groups of people who are mentioned in 100 are the people of the book, all right? And when we look at the Arabs, they are not the people of the book. Some of them are beginning to become allies, all right? So my point in identifying Muhammad as anti-Arab is to show he was first not an Arab, and that these
Hold on, brother. Let's just read that verse before you go any further. The Muhajirun. Let's just go.
Sorry.
Very quick. Very quick.
My brother Isa, sorry. We have to be very quick right about now. We have a whole host of people waiting to ask their questions.
Wow, this is an important point. We got to get this.
Go ahead, please. Finish up. We need one more question. We need to ask other questions, please.
Go ahead.
Shit. Hold on. Let's see quick. Okay, so it just says, وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ. So it says, and of the foremost of the Muhajirun and the Ansar. So the Ansar are the helpers, and the Muhajirun are those that made Hijrah to get help. So the context of, you talking about the Hijaz and so on, the verse, the fact that it's the Muhajirun and the Ansar, you're talking about the people that made they made Hijrah, they moved somewhere, and the people that they moved to are called the Ansar because they helped those that moved, who are called the Muhajirun.
Right,
but,
that's classical. That's classical Hadith Tasfir. So
no, that's Arabic, brother. Come on.
Yeah, it's classical. So you would have to know that the Ansar or the Nasra or the Nasara were not even in that particular area. These were people who were in the province or geographically in the place that you would call Judea. All right? And they're important in Islamic history because of their connection as an Israelite tribe. And when you look at the word Muhajjar, or the way it's expressed there, the reason why I'm saying that it should be Muhijaz is because the Hijaz was a connective geographical area where these people of the Hijaz, the northern Hijaz, and the Ansar or the Nasara had connection. And these were the people who were around the cities of Damascus, Jerusalem, and the place that we call Gaza today. So here's my point. There's a geographical issue here, and the geographical issue shows you who were the people and where they were, and who were their classical enemies, who were the Arabs, some of whom did come over and become allies, or attempt to become allies. And this is the context of verses 97 through 100. It shows you, one, Muhammad was a part of these people in the Hijaz, all right? It shows you, two, who the natural alliance was to, and the reason why the natural alliance was to the Ansar is because of their connection to ancient scripture. They were a people of the book, scriptures. And the Arabs who were surrounding came in two forms. One, groups who were absolutely against the message of Muhammad, and a few who began to ally, which is why in verse 97, it says, verse 90, verse 99, or let me go to my verse. It says in verse 90, let me go to it. We know them, we chastised them twice, and saying you do not know them. So there was a contextual history where the Gassanids and the Lochmids, who were allied with Rome, attacked these particular groups of people who became the group who had the prophet who received revelation. This is what the Quran is highlighting, and the importance of it is that it proves these verses. Would you agree that these verses here prove that Muhammad did not have the connotation error placed on him?
Okay, all right.
I
Well,
would say no, but they don't prove that. But go on.
Brother Isa, we've actually reached the end of the show at the moment, and we're going to try to continue this show a little bit after the close of the show. So we're going to try to put in a description box. Look out for the description box, and we're going to try to set up a private link for all of our top YouTube subscribers right now. So if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you will be, or if you're part of the Facebook group on Talk with the Titans on Facebook, you should be able to phone in and actually speak with Dr. Ali Muhammad. But we're going to close the show right now, and that's going to be a special treat for everybody who is part of our subscription list right now and is part of the Facebook Talk with the Titans group as well. So look out for that that link coming up. So, Dr. Ali Muhammad, I know that you've got so much more information to give, and I think we're going to actually do another show with you on, and we're going to keep it private as well. And we're going to create a nice DVD for our audience members. I think that's what we need to do.
Absolutely, I agree, brother, because, I mean, the book is 438 pages, and it's hard for me to skip around and stay up with each critique because of how I segmented the book. But it's been, hey, listen, it's been lovely, and I want to continue these until we can, get all of the truth out of this. So is there something that you want me to continue, or what do you want me to do right now?
Okay, if you just hold on, let me close the show, and then I'm gonna get the link out to the audience as well. So everybody out there, we've just had a wonderful show with the Titan, Dr. Ali Muhammad, and if you are part of the subscription list, or if you haven't subscribed already, just hit that subscribe button right up there. Hit that subscribe button. That's my face right there. Just hit it, and then you'll be in for a chance to actually have the opportunity to speak with Dr. Ali Muhammad. So I'm signing out right now. This has been Talk with the Titans, and I have been your host, Kalam L, signing out. Peace.